Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi, and in a cool twofer, I seem to be reaching out to all my contact tree in Colorado Springs. But joining us today is a former teammate of mine from Ali Al Salim Air Base in Kuwait. Right? Some people can call him Master Sergeant. Some people would even call him First Sergeant. He is both of those things. But the thing I'm most proud to call him is Doctor. So welcome to the Cape Lead Revolution, PhD Paul Wiggins. Doctor, welcome to the show here today, my friend.
Thank you, Chief. It's always a pleasure to see you, and thanks for the invite.
Man, so happy to have you here, specifically all the education and stuff that you got your PhD in. Can't wait to talk about that. We'll probably save that for the second half of the conversation. But you know, we're going to have you introduce ourselves, but I would be a little bit remiss if I didn't say, here's, you and I just talking from our homes, trying to share some information, some knowledge, but life happens. The doors may open, kids may run in, dogs may bark and do all that stuff. So for all you listeners out there, please allow for life to happen to us. It's gonna be there. So we apologize in advance. But with that, Doc, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves to our viewers out there?
Appreciate you, Chief. So like the Chief said, I have two hats that I actually wear. So during the month, people call me First Sergeant shirt, Doctor shirt, you name it. So Master Sergeant Wiggins, I'm with the 34th AES at Peterson Air Force Base, Colorado, part of the 302nd Airlift Wing. I've been a TR actually for traditional reservists for about 20 years in February, actually. Proud of my time. People ask, you've been 20 years reservist. I said 20 years reservist. The only time I've had active duty is when I get called up for duty, or I jump on some man days when the extra funds are there available and people need help. The second hat I'm going to flip on is the one I don't talk about much because I'm very humble about it, is Dr. Paul Wiggins on my civilian side. My civilian capacity, I work at the Missile Defense Agency at Schriever Air Force Base doing hardware and software configuration management. Total span of that, I've been doing that for about since 2008. Looking for a shift one of these days. This podcast, I love the idea. I'm glad you brought me on. Hope this is a launch for me to get myself started and do these kind of programs. End goal is to take this title and be in a classroom and teach people about leadership, communications, and management. I'm striving to get there. I'm making moves to get there. So now it's just being patient and hoping that that one door opens for me and I can get behind that classroom scene and actually mold young minds to be great leaders. So in a nutshell, that's me. Again, pleasure to be here. I'm glad I'm here. I'm looking forward to the answers and questions, and turn it back to you, sir.
All right. So with that, you and I met roughly January of 18 to July of 18, as you and I were deployed teammates together. As far as that goes, and we did in processing and in briefs. Found out that you were another student of leadership, such as myself. Only you were well more versed academically as far as how that goes. So not just being a senior non-commissioned officer inside the United States Air Force, or as a traditional reservist, or even as a first, or like what put you on this educational path in leadership? What inspired you and motivated you to go down that road?
I think honestly, it's a compilation of two. From my military career, I grew up old school military. Being in 2000, you really had the old school tech sergeants, the old school master sergeants, and the old school seniors and chiefs that kind of put me in the path of how do I get to myself to be a better leader? And I had to follow that dream. So my career path on the education side, for the doctorate side, I told myself I have to prove a point to myself that I can be a better leader. To be honest, it was an ego trip at first. I wanted to prove to people that everybody had told me I couldn't do this, to prove them wrong. And then I got into it and I started saying to myself, man, this is an amazing trail that I'm on. And the research that I'm doing is putting me in a whole 30,000 foot view of leadership. How do I cap that and keep pushing forth to grow myself? Because I feel like as a leader, we're continuously learning. We're never at a stopping point. So I tell myself, I was like, no matter how good you think you are as a leader, you're always a lifelong learner. And I truly wholeheartedly believe in that. And so I think those two reasons are the reason why I jumped into leadership, is because I saw what the military did for me and didn't do for me. Because we talk about good leadership, but we don't talk about bad leadership and what it can do for you. And then seeing my civilian side leadership, the lack thereof showed me what I need to do to be a good leader. So I took those good and bads of both hats and said, okay, how do I launch this to be a better leader that's always learning? So that's where we are today.
So looking back, you said, just hit 20 years in the military. So congratulations.
Appreciate that.
That is a significant step in any, if you give 20 years to any endeavor, that is absolutely noteworthy and worthy of recognition. But looking back on these 20 years, what would Dr. Wiggins or Master Sergeant or First Sergeant Wiggins say to young Airman Wiggins just joining, and what kind of insight would you give for the 20-year journey that they had in store for them?
I think I would tell the young Wiggins, and actually it's funny you said that because I had a chief that always called me young Wiggins. He was a maintenance chief, so he always called, every time he saw, he didn't call me by rank, he just called me young Wiggins. And I think I would tell myself, be teachable. You're not always right.
That is phenomenal advice. So I had to write that down. And that's one of those things, people say it all the time. You see it all over social media right now is leaders are readers, and people have to continue to develop. I will honestly tell you that I studied more leadership and put more effort into my personal growth and evolution as a leader once I sewed on Chief Master Sergeant. Like I read way more books as a Chief Master Sergeant, and Lord knows I didn't study English, right, than I did at any other time throughout my entire life and or career. And like to this day, I'm consuming 1 or 2 books a month, and I wouldn't even get 1 or 2 books in a 10-year time span as far as that goes. So what were some of the first catalysts that started pushing you on this educational path towards advanced degrees in leadership?
I think seeing what it could do for me, honestly. I've seen my professors that held those credentials. I've seen when I was going through my doctorate, and I saw the credentials that these individuals had. And it gave me a boost of confidence to say, you know what, that could be me telling my lifelong story at a school. I went to Colorado Technical University, and we had symposiums once every quarter. And then you had students that graduated telling their story. And it inspired me when I was on my journey. It's like, I need to be that individual up there telling a lifelong story of how I got here. So that was kind of like my catalyst or my slingshot to say, continue this path, continue this journey. No matter how hard it gets, you might get yourself against the wall, but you got to keep pushing. I tell myself that to this day. Even though I have the doctorate piece of paper and the doctor's salutations behind my name, that doesn't mean nothing to me until I fulfill a dream of teaching people in a classroom, honestly.
So that is phenomenal perspective. Not only the fact that you're saying, be teachable, but the fact that just because, you're teachable, you're never done learning as far as that goes. Some of the hardest learning that I had throughout my career was some of those first level leadership roles we call kind of the frozen middle. I kind of bring this up, but we talk about the frozen middle a lot, but I think a lot like you're talking about some of those older, more experienced people, those you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Who are just a little bit set in their ways. Aside from the whole be teachable aspect, what is something more tangible that I think you can have for some of that older generation, right? When we're talking about perhaps you need to evolve your mindset or thought process a little bit.
I think I would show them, look how dangerous a mindset that can be that's linear. You got to be linear and horizontal. I mean, you can't be a linear thinker. I would tell, I tell a lot of these old school master sergeants and tech sergeants that I see now that come and talk to me, I was like, you're thinking real linear. That's a dangerous mindset you're living in because you only see one way. You don't see a 4-way stop sign. You see a 1-way road that's free to go however you want to go. I was like, you're not adaptive to the way people outside think. So it's hard to change someone's mindset when they're so ingrained to the way they think. It's like, how do you change that into somebody? It's not a one-time thing. It's an impression you got to keep going on and on and on and on and keep pounding and saying, okay, if you keep going down this road, this is what's going to happen. If you broaden your horizon and you look 4 ways and look at your peripherals, this is what you can see. You can see a whole new world if you open your lenses to a different world versus the one-track mind. But you got to keep pounding that message as to why it's important. Otherwise, if you don't say why it's important, we're going to one ear out the other kind of mindset.
Now, did you develop a passion for this because of this is something that you observed from the periphery, or were you kind of a victim to some of these mindsets as you grew up through the Air Force organizational hierarchy?
You're kind of trapped in that mindset because the leader that's above you is trapped in that mindset. They put that impression on you to be trapped in that mindset. So how do you escape that? You got to think outside the box. So I had an old school master sergeant when I joined in 2000 that was one-track mind. And he kind of pushed that on us to think that way. And so I brought that same mentality to the Air Force Reserve and to my civilian side. I was like, how do I get out this trap? And so that's when you start reaching out to people and saying, here's how I'm thinking. What do you think? And you gotta do the bottom up sometimes. You really gotta do bottom up coaching. So it took time I call him Ben now. I see him at the gym. I was like, hey, remember those talks we had? He's like, yeah, thank you for having those talks, because I was stuck on a track to be derailed here shortly.
So imagine, going back to some of those earlier supervisors. That's one of the things that I'm very fond of talking about was, if I could, whatever power that little star had in the middle of my stripes, or whatever power that diamond has in the middle of yours, I would use that power to go back in time to talk to my first supervisors. Like, hey, I get that I don't know shit right now, but one day I'm going to. Can you treat me a little bit better? And then I had people who talked about, well, you have it easy. We had to do this and this in my day. I'm like, yeah, you're dumb. Like we don't have to do that stuff anymore. We're smarter. We have greater technology. So I think from a young airman, I learned that, hey, this is a growth business, and we need to evolve because society's evolving. The world platform, the world battlefield is definitely evolving. And we've had a lot of that over the past 20 years. How do you think that has affected you and the teams that you've helped lead?
I think to circle back to one of your points, if you don't mind, is it's unfortunate that it takes a certain rank or a diamond or a star to have an influence on people to really make them think, oh, now you want to hear me out? Why didn't it happen 2 years ago when I was the same individual with two less stripes, so I didn't have a diamond? Exactly. I fall in that. It's just like, why does it matter what I say now versus what I held? What weight does it carry because I'm a position of authority right now? Why didn't it carry weight when I was a tech sergeant or a staff sergeant? I was screaming the exact same thing. You see me now in a position of power. Okay, now you want to respect the word now. So it kind of fondles me. It kind of like throws me off sometimes. We think that way, that a title dictates how much voice you should have.
Well, so here's a question, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole you to an answer. Oh, no. And I'm not trying to bring up bad stuff, right? But when you look at the very entry basis into United States military, is you're going to fall into one of two categories: enlisted or officer. And the only difference at those earliest points is a bachelor's degree, right? And so that's absolutely fine, and you can move forward. How tough is that for you? For someone who could pigeonhole you as an enlisted man, but at the same time, here you are, you have a PhD. Have you found weird interactions weaving back and forth where people can't reconcile this, or have they only looked at you as a master sergeant or an enlisted rather than seeing the value in somebody who has a doctorate in leadership and generational type studies?
Honestly, I think in the military, depending on the job you hold, carries what people perceive of you. So I am a first sergeant. I do have a doctorate in leadership, so it kind of balances out.
Okay.
I didn't make it known at first that I had that because I didn't want that impression of people saying, oh, I can't go talk to him because he's way up here and I'm down here. So I never made it known, to be honest, until people found out and leaked it out. So I had a hard time telling people, yeah, I earned my doctorate in leadership when I was a master sergeant. You would think those kind of credentials would be with like a colonel, lieutenant colonel, but not a master sergeant 20 years. You think of old Krusty probably, who just got an associate's or a bachelor's degree and just left it at that. But now in the reserves, I kind of see it now that they don't see me as just a master sergeant. They see me as, okay, this is Dr. Wiggins on the civilian side. So we call him Doc. Even though he's a master sergeant, we still call him Doc. So it still takes time for me to get used to that. And like I said, I'm very humble to the point where I only talk about it in a formal setting.
Sure.
So I don't see a struggle right now. So it goes back to your question: how do I kind of deal with master sergeant versus the doc kind of in the military side? I know my wing commander, when we do our Friday UTA meetings, he'll introduce me as Doc to the crowd of all the commanders and all the shirts and chiefs, and I kind of always bow my head, like, sir, I appreciate it, but right now this hat is First Sergeant Wiggins' hat right now, but it's just he's got that proud moment too. He's known me my whole career, and he's no, I don't care what you say, damn it, I'm gonna call you Doc. So.
So yeah, I'm not trying to get hung up on this topic, but for all intents and purposes, you are a unicorn. You don't find too many enlisted men or women that are going to have their doctorate. It's just that simple. A lot of the Air Force infrastructure, you will see that in a lot more officers, but they have a lot more degree awarding institutions inside the Air Force that is not set up for enlisted attendance. So the fact that you've gone out on your own and done this is huge. Not only that, the thing that I love is you are the first diamond wearing first sergeant that I've had on my podcast.
Wow.
There have been people on there before who've had that historically, but you wearing it now, you're the very, very first. So congratulations on that, for that distinct honor. But like, I really like that. Like if somebody were to tell me that I were to have a first sergeant who has a PhD in leadership, like, oh, hell yeah. Like, give me some of that. Like that is awesome. How impactful do you think that has been? And how does that help shape some of your relationships inside your unit?
I think people are always asking me, what'd you do it and how'd you do it? What was your trials and tribulations? And I like people coming to me and asking me the questions. I don't like people being intimidated by a title. I love the fact that people come in and say, hey, what'd you do your study on? When I was out there with you, I was actually working on finishing chapter 3 and doing chapter 4 of the 5 chapters. So I spent my days after work, go right into my room and doing that. So I made an impression out there as well when I was when I was out there in maintenance. And I had people come out to me from the maintenance shop saying, hey, I heard you're doing your doctorate degree. That's crazy. You deployed and you're doing your doctorate degree. I was like, how do you find the time? I was like, honestly, I do not know. But let me tell you about how I got here. And I think telling my story that I'm actually a person behind the soon-to-be title at the time kind of soaked in this as well. I have a guy who's deployed. One of the hardest jobs deployed in my mind is a first sergeant. Deployed is one of the hardest jobs because it's 24/7. You deal with people daily. And on top of that, you run to your room and you have enough mindset to start writing analytically and write about leadership and then set up interviews. So I had people saying, I'm not going to go for my doctorate, but I am going to finish my master's degree because of our conversation. So it's not that they want to reach that doctorate level. Even they want to go back and finish that last 2 classes of their bachelor's or their associates or their master's program. I think having that influence is so much inside you that makes you tingle and get you the chills behind your spine to know that you have that much influence to push someone to that next 1 or 2 courses that they can walk down the aisle and feel so proud. So I continue that message when I do my reserve time and I push education on the reserve side, and people come and talk to me. So it's definitely a humbling moment. And I keep saying the word humble because I got to a point where it's very humbling to know that I made an impression on people to finish that one last 2 course out of their degree and then walk across the stage and they come back and tell me, guess what, Dr. Shirt, got my diploma. I was like, man, hell yeah. I love that.
Again, it is such an amazing title, and again, when you look at your career, if you joined in 2000, like 95+% of your career has been born of warfare.
Yes.
And post 9/11 and just understanding what was going on and how the world changed and how everything evolved with that. And so what did that mean for you specifically? And prior to being Shirt, what was your job?
So it meant a lot to see how our wing involved as a leadership when 9/11 happened. I remember being at my civilian job when it happened. And then I remember getting phone calls from my boss saying, hey, I want to check in, make sure you're okay, let you know, hey, we're not being called up yet, but I do want to reach out and let you know, hey, what's going on, give you updates. And when I saw that kind of leadership, even though he was an old school master sergeant, I saw that little glance of leadership in him, that just to reach out and make a phone call and say, hey, are you doing okay? This is the status of the wing. We're not being called up yet. It put an impression on me. And I think that carried a lot of weight with me when I saw that little bit of care factor go a long way.
So how difficult is it for you to provide that care to individuals of your unit if you're a traditional reservist? So whether you're working civilian side or the military aspect of your job, what do you try and do to stay connected, to show people that you truly care for them?
I do all kinds of things, honestly. I mean, we live in a world of text messages now, unfortunately. I think we've lost our interpersonal communication, touch and feel by picking up the phone and just, or even like this video chat here and seeing an actual face and seeing an expression when you make someone laugh and make their day. You don't know what they're going through. We lost that touch. So one thing I have done is I usually do morale calls or morale texts or morale emails, something to reach out to my troops throughout the month. Even if it's a Facebook, and I see them on Facebook, I should a Facebook Messenger. Hey, how's life going? Like now with the whole COVID-19 going on, I've sent out so many emails to people saying, hey, if you need assistance, I'm here. A closed mouth never gets fed. I need you to reach out to me if you need something. If you don't tell me, I have no clue. I'm not in your household. I'm not in front of you. So I need you to tell me. So that care factor, even though we do as reservists, we're only there for 16 hours a month, it becomes family. So during that time, you make that impression of that you do care. And when you make those one-on-ones, when you go around and you do your walk-arounds, you just sit there and have lunch with people, and you see an airman sitting by himself having lunch, and you just sit down and have a conversation. How's your day going? So it's multiple ways we can show that care factor. And I've learned over time, it was a struggle, I'm not gonna lie. Before I became a diamond, I was very selfish. I only cared about Paul Wiggins at the time. Because essentially, when I was, the job that I had as a 3D1, my job was a ticketing system to go out and fix computers and not even talk to you. My job was to just fix your computer, make sure you were back online, make sure you had Outlook, make sure you can print. It was no there was no interpersonal communication at all. It was, your ticket is closed, we're done, I'm out of here. And I think being a shirt really opened my eyes to how much we have an impression we make on people as a diamond wearer. And sometimes we forget that. A simple smile when you walk by. How's your day going? I'll tell you to light up a room for someone who might be thinking who knows what. So I've learned as a diamond that, hey, that care factor has got to be there. Because like I said, we lose one airman, that's way too much. And that's hard to take. So
you were talking about how, being a deployed first sergeant was one of the toughest jobs that you've ever had. But probably one of the most rewarding as well, so that risk reward is absolutely there. It is such a crucible in a deployed environment. The grind, just the daily grind in and of itself is enough to break anybody. Just the
yes,
fact that you're going to the same dining facility, you're going to the same restaurant to eat every single meal 3 times a day, every day for 180 plus straight days. That, I like Chipotle. I don't want to go to Chipotle 3 times a day every
right.
day for 6 straight months, just that in and of itself. So obviously that deployed environment is born of struggles, and you're there to help shape environments to make sure that people are taken care of and feel connected, respected, and protected. So what were some of the good takeaways that you have from that deployed experience back in 2018?
So before I do that, I have to give you kudos for that one day I called you and we were in the middle of the street at nighttime, and I told you my issue. If you remember that night, you and I were talking, and you left an impression on me, of that care impression on me. So that was one of my good takeaways, that at the level that you're at, to still come out in the middle of the night, hear my story, and say, okay, that's not happening. That's not happening on my watch. And to me, that left like an impression on me that's like, wow. I was like, I have a command chief that's deployed. They really do care. To listen to a first sergeant, because sometimes we don't have friends. Our friends are our diamond corps.
Sure.
We vent to them. We don't vent to a command chief. We vent to our diamond corps brothers and sisters. So for you to take that moment, I wholeheartedly appreciate that time you took, because I actually left an impression on me. Is one of my good moments to take away. I think the other moments that I had was seeing an airman who wanted to commit suicide, and I saved him from doing that. That to me was one of my, I've never saved a life before until we were deployed. So to have that responsibility put on me, and to know that I got a thank you from him when he got back to his home of record, that really set an impression on me. Say, hey, you saved me from doing something that I never in my whole life thought I would do. So that was my two takeaways. What you did for me out there in the middle of the street, in the middle of the night, in the pure darkness. And then the second was to get a personal response from an individual that almost committed suicide, to tell me thank you for saving my life. So, I mean, other than that, I don't know what you could ask for in full location.
Yeah, I'm not sure, what greater feedback there is than to somebody come forward and say, hey, you helped me through a tough time, or I don't want to say heaven forbid, but thankfully somebody said, hey, you saved my life because, you cared. You reached out, you probably saw something against the norm and had the presence of mind to speak up and talk. And it's funny because as you go through, from my experience, as you go through the military career, you kind of alluded it to as well. You say, some a little bit was ego, or you're a little bit selfish from time to time. I'm a firm believer that, you need to understand the, my, and our. Because when I joined the Air Force, and then became my Air Force. I had a sense of ownership, and I controlled everything around it. And then when I became a senior non-commissioned officer, it kind of became our. And I
Right.
wish I would have understood those concepts sooner. I wish somebody would have taught me those three levels realistically of whether you want to call it connectedness, whether you would call it organizational buy-in, however you want to shape it. But I really wish that somebody would have pulled me aside, or perhaps they would have cared about me a little bit sooner and be able to articulate how they care or why they care, because I think I missed out on some of those opportunities. So the reason I say that is, did you have any of these amazing leaders who pulled you aside, who stopped some of the selfishness, or who stopped some of the rough around the edges type thing to maybe help straighten you out a little bit?
Oh yeah. I go back to 2005 when I deployed to the Southwest Asia. This was my first deployment. Uh, Chief Bebo, Ronald Bebo, was the maintenance chief at our wing. He was one of those chiefs that put the fear of God in you when you know you had to go to his office. So let me set the scene, if I can, real fast, how his office is set up. So you walk into his office and he has model planes hanging everywhere in his office. He has what he call an ass chewing chair right there in front of his desk. Then he has his desk kind of catty corner, so his back is kind of turned to you. So you knew if you got called into his office, it wasn't for how's your day going, kind of talk. It was, okay, what did you F up? How do we get this straight? So he was my deployed chief. And I remember the fear of looking at him. I was fearful just looking at him because I didn't know him. I just knew from word of mouth who he was, the reputation behind him. But this was the kind of chief that would take 15 bullets for you and still cover you at the same time, even on his last dying breath. To me, that held so much weight. So fast forward in time, 2005, we deployed, we landed in Southwest Asia. He got out in front of me, and this is verbatim. I know we're recording, but I want to give you the verbatim what he told me. He called me young Wiggins, and said, if you can't do this fucking job, I want you to turn around and get back on this plane and go the hell home. I mean, as a staff sergeant, what do you say to that? I mean, that's just like, I stood there and I think my soul left. I swear my soul left my body. And I was just standing there just like, okay, I have a chief. I know your reputation. He just told me if I can't do this job, go home. And then I asked him, like, what were you trying to tell me with that? As the deployment went on, because I was sitting right outside of his office. He goes, I wanted to instill fear in you, but I also wanted to instill confidence in you. You made it to this point. You were handpicked to come to this job. I wanted to instill confidence in you. And sometimes I don't use the right words, but those words put you on a path to where you are now and where you're going to be. And I thank him for those words because I think about that all the time. It tells me if I can't do this job, I need to go the hell home.
So I guess I would offer there, as I hear those words, they definitely make an impression. They're probably very, very truthful. I'm not sure if that's a technique that I would probably use to speak to somebody out there. So knowing what you know now, are you still okay with that conversation, or would you change anything? And if you would change anything, how would you want that conversation to go in today's environment?
I think in today's environment, it's very sensitive, and you got to adapt to the sensitivity of the people nowadays. Like I said, I grew up in the younger, different Air Force in 2000, where it was no filters, to where now you have to apply a little bit of filter and personality and kind of sensibility behind it. So you have to come with a little bit of a soft approach to these kind of conversations, but you have to make the message worthwhile. You got to, if you just tell me, okay, I want you to do this job. Okay, great. What is it that you really, what's going to come out of this for me? A better airman, rewards that can come out as, who knows, a decoration out of it. You got to put a spin to it that's going to make people, show them the benefit behind what you're trying to tell them. Don't just give me a message. Tell me the message and what can I benefit from that? And I've learned that from the millennials that are in this Air Force now, is that you just can't tell them something. You got to tell them there's a reward. What is the reward behind it that's going to motivate them to do better? That's not every millennial. That's not a blanket statement.
Sure.
That's just for handpicked that I've seen, that when you tell them here's the risk and the reward. The risk is this, but the reward is that. They love to hear risk versus reward. So you just got to approach it with a little bit of filter, a little bit of confidence building, and you got to tell them what the reward is and how it's going to make them a better individual.
So it's kind of funny because, I hear those, and the question I guess that I have for you for those statements is, do you think your approach is because we need to adjust to millennials, or are we just more of a woke society, right? We hear that all the time. do you think it's because it's we had to adjust to a younger generation, or is it just we're finding out that this is the right thing to do, perhaps?
I think it can go two ways. It can go both ways, honestly. I think we have to, like I said earlier, I think we have to adjust to our younger people. We don't adjust. We adjust to them. They don't adjust to us.
Amen.
Like to the statement, we are woke. We are seeing a new way of communication. We are seeing a new way of delivering a message. We are seeing the impact of our verbal message to people. So I would say that we are adapting as we go to the way people receive the message. And right now, the way people are receiving the message is not hard old school. It's okay, put a little soft behind it, put a little padding behind it, but also tell me the good that's going to come out of it.
Absolutely. So this is a good entry point for us to get into the second half of our conversation. So we're going to take a little break here. So everyone watching and or listening out there, stay tuned, and we will be back after a quick break with Dr. Paul Wiggins. Be right back. Okay, everybody, we are back from break with Dr. Paul Wiggins. So, Doc, obviously we have to talk about the educational study because I think it is so amazing to hear and obviously so valid and prevalent in not only contemporary military society, but contemporary American society. So man, I'm going to just kind of give you the floor for a little bit. Tell us about how you got started with your degree, why you chose it, what you found out, and where that's kind of put you right now.
Perfect. So I started this program back in 2015. I was sitting at my civilian job, and I have an idle mind that if it's not busy, I have a hard time sitting still. I like to be busy, like my mind going. It keeps me learning. So I was sitting at my desk one day. I said, "What can I do to better myself?" And I was just going through the different schools. It's like, no, I can't do this. I'm not about to join this journey of being a doctor. It's just, I was looking at the syllabus. I was looking at the online classes. It's like, I just don't have the time and I don't have the bandwidth for that. But then I said to myself, am I cutting myself short by already giving up on something that I haven't even started yet? I said, how can I give up on a goal I haven't even started yet? So it took me a couple of days to sleep on it, talk to at the time, my girlfriend, who's my wife now, talk to my parents, talk to other friends. I was like, hey, here's my goal. How far off track am I if I want to go down this path? So it's like, hey, they always say, reach for the stars. Like, no, reach for the universe. Keep going. The stars are just right there. Keep going for the next reachable, tangible achievement. So I said, okay, what could it hurt to reach out to a admission specialist and say, hey, I'm interested. Can you tell me about the program? I'd like to get on it, kind of see where it takes me. So lo and behold, I reach out to the admin specialist and she says, hey, here's a couple of questions to see if this program is right for you, to see if you have the time for it. Because, hey, in today's world, we're busy. We're 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, workers. And here's a set of questions. Answer these questions, send them back to me, let's have a discussion. So I said, okay, I'm open to that. So she sent me the questions. The questions were kind of pretty basic. What do you do with your time after work? How would you arrange your classes if you had a full load of 3 classes? How would you prioritize your day? When you have an assignment come in, how do you prioritize your weekends? I mean, it really got deep and personable to make you think, okay, is this program for me? So I answered those questions, sent it back, had a communication talk with her, and we went back and forth. And to myself, I said, you know what? This is not for me. I was like, what am I going to get by being in debt, for one? Because the Air Force won't pay for a doctorate. I'm in debt, probably $55,000. I was like, do I really want to go down that trail of being too busy, no life, being in debt? And I said, you know what? That's being selfish. I got to think bigger than me. So thinking bigger than me, I was like, okay, sign me up. She's like, perfect, let's get going. So she sent me an essay that I had to write her. So I had to write an essay about, so here's the difference. People say PhD, people say doctorate. So the question in her, I had to write this essay was a 2-page essay as to why I want to be a doctorate. If I put PhD in this, my application would have gotten declined and you wouldn't have gotten in, because there's a difference between a PhD and a doctorate. That's doctorate of philosophy, doctor of psychology, I'm sorry. And then you have other doctorates. So I had to tell her why I wanted to be a doctorate. And I said, if I put PhD in there, the dean would have shut me down and I would have lost my opportunity. So she's like, you have 48 hours to write me a 2-page paper as to why you want to be in this program and what you're going to do to succeed, and how do you see yourself walking across stage in a 3-year timeline? Because it's a 3-year program. It's like, I want you to write out year by year how you plan on achieving every milestone in your 3-year span. And to my mind, I'm like, wow, this is too much. I'm not doing this. Because at first I felt good with her telling me the questions that she asked me initially, to now writing this essay saying, I need to tell you year by year how I'm going to meet every milestone. How do I know? I don't know what the milestones are. And that's what they want you to think. It's like, you don't know what the milestones are, because in life, it's going to throw you a curveball. It's going to throw your milestones off. How do you adapt to those milestones being thrown off? Okay, I get it. So I wrote my 2-page paper. And then once they read that, it goes to the dean. Dean has a phone call with you and tells you, hey, I read your paper. I want to ask you some sidebar questions based on what you wrote. Had that conversation. And then the next statement is, we'll contact you about a week or 2 and let you know via email. So as you know, when someone tells you that, we're going to send you an email in about a week or 2. You're checking every email, every bing that comes in, you're checking it. You're nervous. When you hear it come in, your pulse goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you're sweating, hot flashes. I get that notice that says you've been accepted to the doctorate program. Your next step is to pick your concentration. And then I go back to the admin, the counselor. She says, okay, here's a list of doctorates that are out there. What do you want to do in life? I said, that's a great question. Can we keep it at the general concentration until I figure that out? She's like, no, we're not going to keep it at general. She's like, I want you to focus on something that's going to make you better. What do you want to improve on? I was like, wow, that's a tough question, because there's Homeland Security, there's organizational leadership, there's healthcare administration. By all means, you name it, what's out there. So I saw one that jumped out and it said executive leadership. I was like, that sounds like an interesting title to go and focus on. And I asked her, like, so what does this executive leadership degree and Doctor of Management executive leadership degree mean? She's like, that could take you to a lot of places. You could be an SCS on government side. You could be a coach, executive coach. That right there is when she told me I could be a coach and go into organizations and teach leadership, made my light bulb go off.
Nice.
And at that, I told myself, I want to be an executive coach. And I want to figure out, how do I go into organizations, because I see it day to day, organizations at top level that aren't hitting the mark. How can I come into this organization right now that I'm in currently at the time and make an impression that says, how are you handling people at a leadership level? So I jumped into that course. I met some amazing professors that were actually executive coaches. They were professors, of course, adjunct, and they did a lot of on the side, coaching jobs. So they did executive coaching. I really drilled down to be an executive coach. And I think when I started going through all my programs, it was a lot of leadership courses, a lot of management courses that taught me a lot. Like, I've never heard of 360 feedback until my doctorate program. Never knew what it meant. I met some great people. Like I said, we had our once every quarter symposium where we go in and meet our fellow students and teachers, and we have workshops. So year 1 was basically get the core classes out of the way, leadership, management courses, the qualitative, quantitative research courses, and then you start diving into dissertation topics, how to refine chapter 1, or how to start chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So the first year is basically your core classes. Second and third years when you actually narrow down a topic, pick what you want to study, and then you start getting assigned a coach who's your professor, who's your coach. He or she will walk you through from year 2 to year 3 to when you walk across the aisle. So long story short, my journey when I was in this, I even have it in my dissertation, my dedication. So when I met my current wife, she was my girlfriend at the time in 2015. At the time, I was so focused on my writing that I couldn't give her the attention that she needed, because it was so heavy on what I had to do. We actually broke up, and we got back together 6 months later. But I had to tell her, hey, this is a demanding course. So I found out that one of the symposiums, they had a course for spouses, friends, and loved ones that can come in and understand what we go through. The teachers actually tell them, hey, when they're going through these courses, this is what you should expect. This is where they need your help. and a light bulb went off on her. At that moment, she became my rock. When she started when she went through that course, she started helping me. She became my second set of eyes when I couldn't see anymore. Glasses off, glasses on. I could not see. Everything was being blurred. She read chapter per chapter, line for line, and she helped me get out of my writer's block mindset. I can't tell you, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have this title. She helped me across the finish line. So I dedicated my whole dissertation to her.
Wow.
It was amazing. It's just like being an Air Force spouse. Without them, your career is nothing. And just like with my doctoral journey, without her being in my life and the way she helped me read every chapter, every word, I wouldn't be here where I am having this conversation probably with you, being acknowledged as a doctor, walking across the stage 2 years ago. So in short, the journey was very stressful. It taught me a lot about myself as an individual. I learned a lot from the leadership courses that I read and I took, the research that I had to do. My dissertation was on generational conflict between baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials, but it focused on the nurses. And I wanted to hear the perspective of the baby boomer nurses on how they dealt with generational conflicts between themselves, Generation X, and millennials. It was amazing to me, the old school mindset, like we talked about earlier, versus the new school mindset. I'm a Gen X, and then I'm very leave me alone mindset. Give me a task and leave me alone. I was like, so one of my questions is like, so how do you deal with a Generation X who has a mindset of leave me alone when you give them a task? You want to help them. You're old school as a baby boomer. You want to help them out, but they say, leave me alone. It's like, how do you deal with that? It becomes conflict. I was amazed at the responses that I got from the 10 that I interviewed. And then I think to myself, was like, those are good questions to think about when you hear it from a different perspective. So not to drag it on, but like I said, it's taught me a lot. I appreciate what I learned. I appreciate the networks that I've made. I appreciate every aspect of my teachers and professors that taught me everything. I want to take what I learned and vomit it out, in a sense, to the next generation that says, hey, I'm a Gen X, but I'm also teachable. And so that's what taught me a lot when I did my research. And like I said, I owe it all to my wife. Without her, I wouldn't be here. So I praise her when I read it. It brings me to tears when I read my dedication, because it was so powerful at what she did. And I don't think she realized it. To see me walk across the stage at the end in 2018, it was heartfelt. This journey for anybody, it's a hard journey. So if anybody's out there listening that wants to take this doctoral journey, I tell you, it is going to be hard. It's going to be rewarding, but it will test you like nothing will ever test you. Time management, your will, your faith, your friendships, your family. You will lose friends. I lost a girlfriend at the time. I have 0 friends now because I was so dedicated to get my job done and get this degree done. But now they see the dedication in me. So again, if anybody's out there listening that wants to go down this journey, it will test you. It will test your will. It will test your why the hell am I doing this mentality. But to that, like I said, it's been a great journey. I wouldn't change it for the world because it taught me everything I know now, and it's making me think in a different 360 mindset that I appreciate. So I hope that answers your question of my journey. I know it was kind of everywhere, but that's just how.
I mean, it was absolutely meant to be everywhere, because there's obviously a whole lot of people who don't take that journey, who don't necessarily know the time suck, the commitment, the dedication involved in that, everything that you have to sacrifice along the way. So I guess that the question comes down to, and again, this is one of those things, because one of my best friends in the entire world, Ben Kohara, he and I were having this conversation, is, you and you alone get to determine what success means to you. Don't go by someone else's measure of that, because it should differ from person to person. So I would have to ask, looking back on it from where you are today, the most basic of questions, was the juice worth the squeeze?
It really was, because like I said in the prior, it was an ego trip. It was I just wanted the title. It was an ego. Now I see what it has changed me as an individual. When someone tells you you're not going to make it, that was just the fuel to my charcoal that said, okay, and you're going to light it for me. I think just people tell me, and I think it was people try to set me up for failure, even at my civilian job, saying, you know, why are you wasting your time and money for that? I'm like, that's a great question. When I'm done, I'll tell you how I at the end. When you see me walking across the stage, I have my diploma, you will see. But the crazy thing is, Chief, is that when I got the diploma and I went to my job, there were people that refused to call me doctor. I think it hurt their ego to call me doc because they were either jealous, they were intimidated. I was like, hey, I'm the same individual you saw yesterday. My salutation just changed. That took 3.5 years of my life. I'm not asking you to call me Dr. Wiggins, but if someone does acknowledge that, don't brush it off as just, oh, he just got his degree. It's a hard title to get. It's not easy.
Well, then, you know, and it really is also fair. You know, there's a quote that I heard long ago is like, you know, pay very close attention to who doesn't clap when you succeed. You know, and that is a very, very telling piece. And I wish that I could say that the majority of the people that I've worked with throughout my career always had my back or really wanted me to succeed. I know plenty of people that were hoping that I'd fall on my face or somehow that I'd screw up again, or, you know, something would happen. I've got a very distinct personality and it doesn't blend with all people. I can annoy people in seconds flat just based off of my energy or my positivity or my in your face type of nature. So I kind of understand, I guess, inherently a lot of that, but a lot of that is based off the studies I've done with personalities and how you're supposed to interact with each other, or at least be cognizant of that so you can maybe adjust or fine tune or tone down, as it were, you know, for other people who may not agree. So I say all of that to say this, is there any lessons or things that you can share that will help people find success, as we have 3 generations inside the workforce right now? So what advice can we have for people to have greater understanding between boomers, Gen X, millennial, or advice that you would have for boomers to work with Gen X and millennial, or advice for Gen X to work with boomer, millennial, and then millennial with boomer and Gen X?
I think my advice would be talk less, listen more. We forget, we talk with the intention to reply. We forget to listen. We lose out on so much when we're not active listeners. We already when someone comes to you with a problem or whatever it is, in your mind, you're listening, but trying to find a solution. You're not trying to hear what they're going through. I was like, so if we talk less and listen more, you'd be amazed at what you learn. So I tell that every day to my people. I was like, when you have conflict, it's like, how much of that did you actually listen and gather? Or were you already in your mind trying to solve what the world's problem of hunger, when this person brought you a conflict? So that's my advice, is just talk less, listen more.
You know, and I think that's very fair, because for people who've listened to my podcast, you've heard me mention a couple different times, I can tell you the exact person I was having the conversation with. And I can tell you the exact conversation we were having when I can tell you, for the first time in my life, I let go of all my listening to respond type stuff, and I focused on purely the intent and the individual that was speaking to me. And it's so embarrassing that it happened so late in my life, so late in my career. But again, I absolutely agree. And I would also add that, like, not only do leaders need to listen, which I absolutely agree with, but I think there's a step that a lot of us miss, is that leaders need to create an environment where people feel safe and vulnerable so they can speak. You know, and I think we've missed that step a lot. Have you seen that, or have you experienced that at any point throughout your career?
I experience it right now in my civilian job. Honestly, is like my current supervisor, in the environment that she sets for us at work, it makes it uncomfortable that you can't think your own thoughts. She doesn't set up the environment where you can think freely. Just for example, I send her emails that need to go to a higher level, and I see her editing. She asks for my opinion, so I give you my opinion, but if you're going to edit it, don't ask for my opinion. So, and I've told her this, I've given her feedback so many times, like, why do you ask for my opinion if you're just going to edit it? Then don't ask for my opinion if you don't like it. I understand it's going to a specific person and specific eyes. We can paraphrase it. Let's sit down together and paraphrase. Maybe my word choice wasn't the best, but let's have that conversation and say, hey, maybe we've worded it this way, or we tried to change this word out. Build that environment where you allow me to learn and fail at the same time. Don't just build an environment where I feel like I want to shut down.
And that's one of the things and this I say nearly every single time in my podcast is that I do not believe in synonyms. Like, they do not exist. Words have distinct meaning. We need to speak with the right words. And or if somebody changes your words, they change your meaning. They change your intent. Now maybe you two disagree on the words, but I think to your point, that's at least worthy of a conversation to have it all out.
And words matter these days. Words really matter these days. You got to speak truth to power. Words really matter.
It's funny. Our wing commander, as you and I were deployed together, he said it all the time. He said, "Words is important."
Yes.
And so we absolutely need to understand that. And as we kind of bring this podcast to the close, thank you so much for being on here. Like, what an amazing journey. Like I am so happy to see one of my fellow countrymen, fellow enlisted man, to go forward, because there aren't many doctors out there, who do this. And so it's just, I thank you for finding the time, for making the time to be on the podcast today. But before we end this, the two questions I like to ask leaders is, like, number one, how do you get your oxygen? What do you do for you on hopefully a daily basis, if not weekly basis, to make sure that you are presenting the best Dr. Paul Wiggins to the entire world that you possibly can? And the second part of that is, what would you do in life if money were no object and you knew you could not fail?
So to your oxygen, what do I do to make the best version of Dr. Wiggins is I look back at all the good and bad in my life that brought me to where I'm at, and I reflect on that. It's funny because there's sometimes I put sticky pads on my mirror. Whenever I'm having a bad day, I look at my sticky pads and tell me where I've gotten and who's helped me get here. So it helps put oxygen back in me when sometimes this world can really deflate you. But what brings you back is being really grounded, humble, and appreciative. So I look at the small things in life. Like right now, it's my 5-month-old daughter that brings back oxygen in my life. Anytime I'm having a bad day, I look at that smile, even though she's got no teeth right now, that gum smile will always bring life back into you. So I look at a lot of things, and I'm appreciative of a lot of different things that bring oxygen back into me. So I hope that answers your question. That's just how I feel. What brings me oxygen back into my life is just looking back on the trials and tribulations that brought me to where I am now. And I'm very thankful. I'm humble. Like I said, I think I've said humble like 1,000 times in our podcast here. It's a word that not many people understand what it means, but to me, it just means I'm appreciative of where I've gotten and who's helped me get here. And so to your second point, if money wasn't an object,
and I've been a lot. Could not fail, what would you do?
I've always been. I'm an airplane junkie. I've always wanted to sit left seat and just fly. Even if it's in a Cessna 172 and I don't get paid for it, if I can just do that 8 hours a day, that's where you'll find me. In a 172 flying around Colorado somewhere, Colorado Springs or Colorado, anywhere. That's just where I think I find myself. When I get behind the little yoke of a 172 and I'm full throttle down the runway, I see the stripe, I reach my marker of when it's time to pull back on the yoke, I pull back on the yoke and I just lift off, and it's just me against me and the world out there. There's no speed limit, there's no cars honking, there's no one cussing at you, there's no one talking, there's no email, there's no Instagram, there's no Snapchat. It's just you and the plane and the world around you. That's where you'll find me.
That is an epic answer to end the podcast on. So again, my friend, thank you for making the time to be on here. So Dr. Master Sergeant, First Sergeant, Pilot Paul Wiggins, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with us before we end the podcast?
I challenge anybody to take a struggle, whatever challenge you have in life. I challenge you, don't put it down, pick it up. Like people are saying, this COVID-19 is a hindrance on our life. It's an opportunity, honestly, to make better. Learn a new language. Pick up a book and read something you never read before. Finish that course. Start drawing. Do something. Go back to the gym, even if you do gym stuff here in the house. Take every opportunity you have and make something worthwhile of it. Now is the time. This is the new normal, unfortunately, that we're learning now. Don't look back at what used to be normal. Look going forth at what the new normal is now and adapt. So I thank you, Chief, for, like I said, what you did for me in 2018, that moment you had with me. You taught me a lot about myself and leadership. So again, I applaud you for that. Thanks again for making that impression. This has been my first podcast, and I owe it all to you. So hopefully there'll be many more in my career. I love talking about leadership. I love talking about experiences. I love getting people on the phone like this and just having a no joke one-on-one, not scripted. Let's just talk it out kind of conversation. And this means a lot to me. So again, I thank you for all you've done up till now. I admire what you do, and I always watch you on LinkedIn, and I watch your videos. I aspire to do what you do. Hopefully one day I get to that point. So my hat's off to you for what you've done, and hopefully this could be you helping me launch myself into a new direction. So again, I applaud you for what you do, and I thank you from my heart for what you do. And like I said, I hope for many more of these kind of conversations. I'm always willing to talk, share, get on conversations with anybody who wants to out there. Whoever wants to hear my journey, I'm willing to share. I love sharing, love making an impression on people. So I ended on that note with full appreciation for having the opportunity to speak with you today. So much appreciated, Chief.
Awesome. I appreciate that. My hat's off to you as well. Congratulations to you and all of your success throughout your military journey, your life journey, fatherhood journey, all that great stuff. As you and I both have young kids, and I've got another one on the way. So man, I would love to have you back here. I'm always looking for great leadership conversation, and this one did not disappoint. So to everybody out there, thank you for spending time with us today. I will catch you here next time on the Cape Lead Revolution. And this is Chacha reminding you to always educate, anticipate, and dominate. We'll catch you later. We'll see you. Bye-bye.